Well, good afternoon and welcome to today's Next Generation Award Preparation Webinar. My name's Phil Higgins and I'm part of the organizing team behind the Landscape Middle East Awards and Conference 2025, and it's a real pleasure to be here with you today. Well, the purpose of this webinar is very simple. It's to help you, the next generation of landscape architects, prepare the strongest possible entry for the Next Generation Vision Student Award at this year's Landscape Middle East Awards 2025. Well, this is one of the most exciting categories of the awards each year. It's where we see bold new thinking, fresh ideas, and lots of creativity that will shape the future of landscape architects across the region and beyond. Well, this year's student entries will be judged they'll be judged on visionary thinking, sustainability, social impact, innovation, and your presentation clarity. And today you'll hear from 4 expert speakers, each giving their practical advice on addressing these criteria in your submission. You'll also have time to ask some questions today with our Q&A, so you can see that there in the platform. So I encourage you to ask questions at any time during the webinar. Take notes and use this opportunity to sharpen your approach. Finally, I want to remind you that the awards aren't just about winning, unless you're a loser. No, I don't mean that. But they're not just about winning. They're about contributing new ideas to the profession to gain exposure for your work and for connecting you with the regional community of landscape leaders. The awards are attended by some of the region's brightest landscape architects, all working in the landscape profession throughout the region. And it's a great avenue for you to get your name there for future reference and connection. Well, this year's Student Award category is open to all university students, and we've extended this to high school students because we've even had a high school student asked if she could make a presentation and entry this year, and we've agreed to that. So university students and high school students, and invites conceptual design entries that tackle future challenges in the landscape architecture community and industry. Students are encouraged to propose visionary, sustainable, inclusive landscape designs that inspire new thinking and push the boundaries of this wonderful profession. Entering your award this year will require you to answer 5 questions and submit your presentation. And the questions that you need to answer this year will be: what is the central vision of your concept? How does your design address sustainability? How does your concept benefit communities? And what innovative ideas have you proposed? And how effectively have you presented your design? Well, the jury will be judging each entry accordingly to a criteria that considers things like visionary thinking and creativity, sustainability, social impact potential, feasibility and innovation, and presentation clarity. So you can then provide us with a link to your presentation. Now, this year, we haven't limited what you will provide to us. This is unlimited. You can present a video, a presentation, lots of images, or a compilation of all of these sorts of formats. Whatever you want to do to present your project in a way that will showcase it the best possible. Well, today you'll be hearing from some outstanding panel of international experts that will guide you in this preparation for your award entry. They'll explain to you how to prepare an entry that sort of gets their attention, because every one of these speakers is a member of our jury panel. So if you're attending this webinar today, you have a direct insight to those that will be judging your presentation. So ask whatever question you want. Get from them, what are they looking for? What do they expect? How do you think that it's best to make this presentation? What stood out last year? What made a difference? These questions are great to ask the panel. And so please send us your questions and we'll get through as many of them today as we possibly can. Well, let's get started. I hope today's session inspires you and guides you on your journey towards preparing an outstanding presentation for our awards. We thank you for your time. I will say that last year we had nearly 46 award entries just for this one category. And from that category, we identified, the top short list, and we promoted those. But I got to tell you, the standard of the entry was very, very good. But I think that it could be better. And that's one reason why we're hosting this webinar, to help you make the best presentation that will get the juries, the judges of this award's attention. Well, let me introduce you briefly the speakers for today's webinar. I'm not going to get them to say hi. They will have a chance in the next stages to say hi to you independently and to make a presentation. But I do welcome and thank Ying Li. Ling is in charge of Student Awards Networking for IFLA, the International Federation of Landscape Architecture. She takes care of the student awards throughout all of the world. I mean, she's a high flyer with the International Federation of Landscape Architecture, and IFLA is also a co-partner for our event. And so, getting to get your name presented to these professionals is a very powerful tool for you. Ying is also the professor of landscape architecture at the Tijan University. So it's wonderful to have her with us. Every time I speak to Ying, she's in a different country, but I think she's in the UK today. So we'll find out if she flew somewhere overnight. We also want to welcome Ying, Reem Alicia. She is the assistant professor at the Kuwait University. Now, Reem has been a judge for our awards every year that we've held an award. She is highly prized and is always the one to say, I am here to assist you. She's got a wonderful reputation in Kuwait, and so many of her Kuwait students submitted awards last year. So we're expecting big things from Kuwait this year. Also joining us, we have Manir Al-Sadi. He is the president of the Oman Society of Landscape Architects. He is coming to us today from Malaysia, but he is very much associated to the landscaping community in the GCC region. He's studied overseas, but as I said, he's the president of the Oman Society of Landscape Architecture. If you're coming to us from Oman today, send him a question and ask for some contact details, and we'll get them to you. If you want to be more involved in what he's doing in Oman, maybe Manir, when you talk, you might want to give us a little brief about some of the other activities that you're involved with in Oman that might be suitable for the students. Also joining us he's joining us. He lives in the UAE, but he's joining us today from Italy. We have Cristiano Luchetti. He is the head of urban design at Dorsch Global. Like Reem, Cristiano has been a judge for our awards every year that we've held it. And so, Cristiano, thank you for joining us today, and we'll be hearing from you shortly. Also joining us today, we have Christina Mujias. She is representing the 2024 Student Award finalists from last year. And we've asked Christine to jump on board just to share with you what was it like to receive an award last year, to be nominated, to see her name up in bold lights, to see a video of her presentation shown to hundreds of people. And so, Christina, thanks so much for joining us. We do look forward to hearing from you as this webinar proceeds. Well, guys, let's get moving forward. I'd like to introduce Cristiano Luchetti. He, as I said before, is the head of urban design at Dorsch Global, but he's also been very much involved in the educational sector for landscape architecture. And today He will be talking to us about designing for the future, the role of design in a digital and sustainable world. So, Cristiano, thank you so much. I'll ask you to unmute yourself and I will hand it over to you. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for this invitation. I'm honored again to be part of this initiative, which represents one of the highest, most interesting event for landscape designers, especially for students. And as you said, Philip, I will talk about somehow the future of design, but from a very general theoretical perspective applied to what it means to be a student nowadays. I believe we are in a special moment. There is a big transformation in the disciplines of architectural design and landscape design, and I think that there is with this very short presentation I will do now. I want to address some of these changes and see how the students can actually start thinking of a different way of undertaking their journey, academic journey and learning journey toward becoming a good architectural design and the landscape design more specifically in this case. So I will share my screen. Okay, so I titled this presentation, this short presentation, What is Next? Obviously, I'm trying such a short time. I only have 10 minutes to talk about very, very big topics, very complex topics that are addressing, as I said, the design education. And I want to kind of talk about the fact that something has happened in the last years that changed the way how we learn, how we practice landscape design, architectural design, and urban design. And with this very first diagram here, I want to show when this happened. There was a moment in time in the last century where the modern thinking has changed and it became way more sure of what designers would propose as a model for inhabiting the built environment and landscapes. And this happened at the end of the Second World War, with the beginning of the 50s and the 60s, the counterculture of those years. At that moment, basically what was driving the work of designers has somehow collapsed, because before we had movements. A movement is where a group of thinkers, of designers and philosophers kind of follow the same apparatus, theoretical apparatus. And in doing so, their work is managing to produce a unique and special and specific idea for designing the world that we live in. From that moment on, this kind of, as I say, collapsed. And more throughout the years, even during the last few years, we witnessed a transformation from the movement to what is called a neo-subjectivism. Basically, we don't have this very strong theoretical infrastructure or framework that we can refer to, and each one of us is kind of trying to understand and critically provide possible solutions in our design and design work. And this happened mostly by looking at the idea that probably before what we thought about academia and the students that were studying were referred as a sort of an ivory tower of knowledge, like in the drawing on the left. And that's because we had very strong and very important theorists that were providing these kind of ideas that we could actually learn and implement and transform their thinking into our design. And if you know some of these people in these pictures, well, then I'll be very happy. But that kind of faded away, as I said, and with the postmodernism. And Also, another very important component is the transformation that our society carried forward with the use of for the use of the technology. There is an Italian philosopher called Umberto Galimberti who wrote a book about the technique that has become the subject of history, and he says that this age is no longer characterized by a humanist approach, and the human thought is nowadays subdued to the power of technology. Therefore, man is no longer a subject alienated and objectified by capitalist production, but a product of technological alienation, which establishes itself as a subject and man as its predicate. And the implications of this kind of shift in understanding technology and what the world is offering to us that was not offering before, it's very important and relevant in what students do, what students learn nowadays in their schools, in their programs, because as again, Umberto Galimberti writes, technique has always been a means by which one reach purposes, while now it seems to have become the very purpose. And so we need to understand this transformation in the way how we used to think about design, the theoretical framework behind our design ideas, and how we implement it, especially nowadays through technology, the new technology. Because the work of landscape designers and architects and urban designers has transformed incredibly in the last few years. If you look at these two conditions where people used to work before in a very slow pace, in having time of reflecting on what they were doing by doing mistakes that could not be just erased on a computer, or nowadays where we have immerse ourselves into digital space, it's a completely new dimension. And the implications of this are very important, as I said. Someone says that it's widely recognized that in the late 20th century, the discipline of architecture and landscape design foregrounded the use of digital tools and techniques ahead of every other design discipline. So this is, again, it's something that we need to consider, because the way how we spend time in universities and learning design, it looks different, as I say. If you think about in the 80s, 70s, or 80s, even at the beginning of the 90s, on the left, that's how students will actually undertake the way of learning, by protesting, by bringing ahead their ideas, the new ideas of changing the society. And in this case, if they were landscape designers or architecture designers, through their work. Right now, we are very keen on understanding hands-on techniques and experimenting with technology and laboratories and so on. And this kind of shift changed the way how we, as I said before, we design. I know this because in that picture, the head is myself. So that's why I remember this, and I witnessed this transformation from when I was a student to when I became a lecturer. And that's the kind of change also, because somehow the students I worked with in many years, I realized, maybe because also it's kind of a professor way of changing this teaching method, that we don't know very much the work of the main thinkers and practitioners and architects and landscape designers. And so this it's informing the way how we do things, like with the loss of certain knowledge, for instance, that I noticed throughout in these years, where the very basic skill of sketching ideas and exploring the visualization of our concepts has been replaced by computer digitally created images that cannot really be controlled and cannot portray some complex thinking. And so this kind of lack of knowledge sometimes is witnessed, and I think that this also change this approach. Visual education is so extremely important to become designers, and you notice also the way how in using digital tools like Revit or Beams at the very early stages of the design kind of loses that idea of going over and over through your manual sketches and drawing the ideas of your design. There's also, again, with the possibility of new technologies, there is a shift also in the way how we can even think about architecture. I took this quote from a professor that is all his work is about this kind of products in his academic courses and programs. He says it is possible now to transgress the limits of architecture through and landscape design, of course, through replication, reproduction, and time-based process to provoke an even more challenging process of discovery. Design studios can establish a starting point that is not architectural and is not landscape design. And somehow I wonder how this process that went to the edge of theoretical and design processes and exploration can inform the knowledge of students understanding the context very much and representing it through and interpreting it through their design, the way how they can produce projects that are contemporary and they are focusing on the contemporary context. This is an image of a project that won a very important award. And I always think that this kind of work takes a lot of time to be produced. And maybe this image has been, developed and produced throughout one whole semester. But then at the end of this process, I always wonder, okay, it's an interesting topic we can talk about, an interesting proposal, but what is the knowledge of understanding a project and being able to produce a design that is actually applicable to the society nowadays that is, as it was explained before, inclusive and sustainable, the sustainable and sustainable, yes, this way, let's say this way. And so these are my questions about how the landscape design courses and programs and architectural programs are going ahead and transforming themselves throughout time. And now, finally, since very few years, we are witnessing this huge transformation that AI is bringing to our work, and somehow, as it opens up to possibility, incredible possibility, it also scares me a lot because somehow it seems that we are looking for and we're using this new technology as a shortcut instead of producing these ideas that can be then controlled through design and visualized and developed and and refining these ideas and becoming interesting projects that can have a real impact on the society and the environment. Then we kind of escaping. If we were not, if we're not careful, we might escape toward the very easy, very quick solutions that then they might not be so interesting to apply. And so basically, I took this image here. I prepared these slides where the RCR architects that are also landscape designers. I went to one of their lectures and they were explaining the very basic components that make a good project. And they were describing, they're from Spain, so they were describing the 4 phases that they were always going through in their design. And they won the Pritzker Prize a few years ago. So I will trust that they're actually right in what they say. And they kind of divide this process in 4 stages. And the first one was the lugar, which is the place. Understanding the context where we operate, which seems to become less important in favor of a very personal design expressions. So we kind of, I noticed that throughout these years, the understanding, the way how we interpret the context where we are from a social point of view, from a perceptual point of view, from an environmental point of view, is becoming less important for the production of our conceptual design. And so in this sequence, the next stage will be to understand the program, the programma for on the that's the way they say. And this remains somehow very important, because this is usually provided by a client, and that obeys to logics that belongs to the market, to the economics, to the environment that is produced. But that's kind of given. But then these two factors, the context and program, needs to be critically put together and produce the concept of your design. And after we understand the theoretical and we propose the theoretical approach toward the project, then we finally have the project. So those 4 phases remains extremely important, although unfortunately I'm noticing that some of them are kind of fading away in their importance. So what do we do now? Well, basically, I more than giving exact suggestions on how to put together your project, which I believe my colleagues will provide to you after me, I wanted to, as I said, cover from a more theoretical point of view. And this is what I would say, what I will tell to myself if I was still a student. I wish I was. And the very first is to expand your knowledge. And the way how to do this is still the same traditional way, is to read books and try to avoid a very simplistic and very quick knowledge that comes from the social medias and all the informations that we receive. This is something that stays always at the very superficial level. But we need, as a designers, as a landscape designers, as sophisticated landscape designers, to go deeper, to delve into the concepts, to the ideas, and understand what is behind, so that we learn also how to criticize it and become original designers, someone that can understand the prerogatives of the project that are needed and produce the original idea. And then study contemporary landscape designers and their projects, even if you're not asked to do so. This is extremely important. I always say that the only way to teach design is to show students how to do things, and also to refer other work, so that the students can go and check other solutions provided by very important designers. So to understand how they solve that issue, how can you incorporate through the use of references those ideas in your design. And this is something that, again, is kind of fading away. I don't see it happens very much anymore. And that's a pity, because it's really important to do so. Learn how to draw. If you didn't learn how to draw, or you're not that good at drawing, please remind that if you don't know how to transform your ideas through the process of visualization, and to control your ideas through the drawing, I find it very hard to believe that someone can become a designer. Maybe we can find a professional position in, we have so many in the fields of landscape design and architectural design, but not really those conceptual design that actually bring ahead their ideas. Demand teaching competency. This is also very important. As I see, sometimes my students were just passively listening and absorbing what was told without really being critical of the knowledge that were coming from the instructors. Ask to see instructors' work. Ask them, what did you design? How did you design? And what is the quality of what you do, so I can learn from it? Use AI and technology as a tools, and not as a stand-in for your creative voice. This is something I already covered, and I think is extremely important to don't get absorbed to these possibilities, and just remind that these are tools for you. and you can use them and incredibly improve the productivity of your work and even somehow the creativity, but you remain the main actor of this process. Engage deeply with your context. Again, I see somehow lately a detachment of young students to the context around them. It's important that you walk. It's important that you go out and leave the places. It's important to go slow and understanding social and ecological prerogatives of the place where you operate. This is extremely important because, as you remember, the lugar from RCR architect, it's one of the most important components. And then finally, in expanding your knowledge, also travel and try to find the opportunity of experience of studying abroad. And I think the exposure to the diverse environments do really expand your design thinking. Yep. Thanks and good luck.
Thank you, Cristiano. It's always difficult to give an Italian a microphone. Getting it back is much more difficult than giving one. I think you could continue talking for the entire webinar. So I appreciate that input. It's very informative. Thank you very much. Well, I'm going to head over to Ying Li. She is in charge of student affairs for IFLA, also a professor of architect in Tianjin University. Ying is going to be talking to us about why you should enter. What's the value of your competing in our awards, and what can you expect to learn from this? Ying, thank you for joining us today. Why don't you jump on board here, and we look forward to what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. To all our colleagues and students joining from across the Middle East and beyond, it's truly an honor to speak with you today. My name is Ying Li. I am an educator in landscape architecture, currently serving as chargé d'affaires for the Students' Award under the International Federation of Landscape Architects. Founded in 1948 in Cambridge, IFLA now represents 80 national associations across Africa, the Americas, Europe, Asia-Pacific, and the Middle East. I'm speaking to you today from my home in Cheltenham, as shown in my background image. Not just any town in England, but the very place where Sir Geoffrey Jellicoe, the founder of IFLA, began his education as a student. It is here that his journey in landscape architecture quietly began, and perhaps today, for some of you, a similar journey begins too. I've spent much of my life working across cultures from Europe, South America to Asia, and now learning deeply from this remarkable region in the Middle East, where I've also had the privilege of teaching students while working at 3 British universities. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Dr. Jala Madomi, President of IFLA Middle East, and the recipient of Geoffrey Jellicoe Award for her visionary leadership in placing students at the heart of the region's effort. I'd also like to thank Mr. Hal Margridge, a long-time contributor to IFLA and one of the few remaining direct links to the legacy of Jellicoe, who kindly reviewed my talk. I'm grateful for his encouragement over the years and honored to continue the legacy he has helped shape. Today, I wish to speak not only about competitions, but about your place within a global profession that urgently needs your voice, your imagination, and your contribution. So why enter this competition? I'd like to share 3 reflections with you today: recognition, challenge, and connection. Firstly, recognition. Let the right eyes see you. In this award, your work is not simply assessed, it is witnessed. Educators, practitioners, and leaders from across the region and beyond will see your work. You are no longer designing only for a grade. You are sharing your concept, your design voice, and your sense of place with those who are truly listening. In a region rich in cultural heritage and design innovation, your vision matters. Secondly, challenge. Let the process refine you. Preparing your entry will challenge you. You will have to ask yourself, what do I truly want to say? How can I express this with clarity, strength, and integrity? This process is not just about design. It's about discovering your direction. It's in asking these questions that you begin to grow, not just as a designer, but as a thinker. This is the beginning of maturity, and is what transforms a project into a mission. Finally, connection. Let this be your starting point. Competitions are not just about prizes. They are about belonging to a professional community that crosses language, culture, and generation. Here, in a region where hospitality is deeply valued and community is central to every design, that sense of belonging is especially powerful. This is how global practice begins, not in isolation, but in participation. Why now is the perfect time to join the competition? You are entering the profession of landscape architecture at a significant moment. Across the Middle East, landscapes are being reshaped, cities are rising, traditions are meeting new technologies. At the same time, the world is facing urgent challenges. Climate change is escalating, calling for bold, nature-based solutions. Biodiversity is under threat, demanding renewed care for ecological systems. Equal access to public space is disappearing in many cities. And across the globe, people are seeking places that support culture, identity, and inclusion. This moment demands that we ask, how do we restore land while honoring memory? How do we design for both nature and people? How do we rethink beauty in the ways that are lasting and just? This year's theme, Nature and Community, is not just a brief, it is a core. In the age of crisis, landscape is no longer background, it becomes foreground. And I believe this region, with its long traditions of care for the land, poetry, and a deep sense of space, can offer a perspective the world needs to hear. Here is a question for you. Are you ready? To those who feel unsure, maybe you're asking, is my project strong enough? Am I ready? Should I wait? Here is what you should remember. You are ready. Everything you need, your idea, your intuition, your vision is already within you. What you have to offer is not only valid, it is needed, now more than ever. Joining this competition is not about perfection, it's about participation, it's about showing up with what you have, where you are, and exactly who you are. When you take that step, you are not just submitting a design, you're stepping into your future and into the life of this profession. You are joining a community of people who care, people who believe that landscape are not just about beauty, but about memory, justice, and belonging. People who believe that design can heal, connect, and transform. I'll close by returning to the place we started. There's already a place for you in this profession. What you need now is courage. Courage to imagine, to express, and to be seen. Remember, this award is more than a competition. It is a conversation, an invitation, and beginning. Your voice, your imagination, and your contribution matter. And remember, As you are, so will be the future of landscape architecture in your country. As you are, so will be the future of our global profession. As you are, so will be the future of the places we all call home. Good luck to all of you, and thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Reem. A very insightful discussion there on what can be expected and what you will gain from entering the awards this year. Well, I'd like to push over to Reem, who is the assistant professor at the University of Kuwait, or Kuwait University, Landscape Architecture. And Reem's going to talk to us today about why bold ideas matter and how to bring them to life within your presentation. Reem is, I'm not going to say too long, she's been involved in the industry for some years. I'm not going to say how many years. But Reem, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to what you can bring to our students today. Thank you, Reem.
All right. So welcome, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and I want to thank Landscape Middle East Phillip for inviting me to be on this wonderful panel. And I really enjoyed listening to the first two speakers, and I hope that I can continue on this nice sequence. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is innovation. One thing this award is looking for in your entry is innovation. So we want to see how bold and creative you can be. This is what I'm going to talk about today. As you know, the Landscape Middle East Awards and Conference is going to be held in Abu Dhabi this year. In the theme is nature and community. So just very important to keep that in mind as you prepare your presentation, the theme of nature and community. I would like to pause and encourage those who are able to actually physically attend the conference in Abu Dhabi to do so, because more than an award, this is really a good chance for you to network with professionals in landscape architecture, regionally, in the Arab Gulf and beyond as well. So again, I cannot emphasize enough or encourage you to really try to attend, even if you don't submit an entry, just attend, because there is a conference component to it where a lot of the successful practitioners get together and talk about the latest issues in the profession. So our profession is evolving very fast, and we always need new ideas with this constant change. We're dealing with many issues such as climate change, biodiversity loss, urban overcrowding, and shifting social dynamics. So it's essential for us to be innovative in order to stay relevant. We must adapt, and this means we must welcome new ways of thinking, new perspectives, perhaps design proposals that we haven't imagined can happen the way you propose. And the next generation, which is you, and only you, are the ones who can push boundaries, because you are more fresh than us. We are, we've seen it all. We're kind of getting old. So we need you to help us. Really, I'm in a position, I teach at Kuwait University, and when I see the students and that passion in them, it really inspires me. So you are going to, with your submissions, you're going to inspire the judges, the juries, and you're going to inspire the practitioners that eventually see your submissions, the finalist submissions. You're not just the future. You are now too. And the present really matters. We want to see what you propose for the present, now, and the future. We are here to hear you. We're listening. So, what does innovation mean in landscape architecture? When we think of innovation, most of the time we probably would think technology, right? AI, virtual reality, and so on and so forth. However, it doesn't just mean that. It can be other things, such as new ways of using space, creative planting or ecological strategies, the use of sustainable or unexpected materials, different models for engaging with communities, because at the end of the day, it's people who we're designing it for. And we must not forget that we're also designing for wildlife and ecology. And this is what distinguishes us from any other design profession. Most importantly, the design has to be inclusive, especially for those in positions of least power. And they must be accessible to those with physical challenges. Finally, the way you tell your story, your design story, is the way you're going to capture us and captivate us with your drawings, with your design visions. So make sure you have a very strong way of telling your story. So we ask you to think differently and always think outside the box. So we are looking for creativity always. I mean, this is a given in every design discipline, and at school and the profession. And it's great to be creative, but we also must be realistic, right? And we need to know, is this feasible? How is this going to be possible? So essentially, we're asking you to show the how behind your concept. For example, how will your idea be built or experienced? What materials or methods might be used? Is it going to be phased or built over time? And most likely it will in our profession. So show us that graphically. How would people interact with it? And how is the community going to use the space? So a little bit tips for innovation. You have to be clear about what's new or different about your submission. So you can't expect the jury to readily see everything there. You have to really imagine, you're presenting your work to us and you're physically not there. So how can your drawings speak for themselves? And mostly, because our design language is graphics and drawings, that's what matter most. And of course, we don't want too much text, but enough just to help explain. Connect your idea to the nature and community theme. That's the theme. So there has to be a connection there, a very clear one. Explain how it's going to work. We need to know that you've thought this through and there's actually a possibility of having it constructed. So don't hold back, be brave when this award celebrates forward thinking. So innovation shapes the future of our profession, and you are the innovators. Use this platform to make your creative vision seen. Push boundaries, inspire change. Submit with passion and contribute to a more sustainable, inclusive, and meaningful present and future through landscape architecture. And I'd like to end with a note, and I want to repeat something that Ying said just now, which really inspired me and I think captured the essence of this whole award and conference, which is, she said, this is not about winning at the end, although Of course, that's a bonus and always welcome. It's not about winning, but about participation. So participate, become part of this community, network with fellow submitters, come to the conference, network with fellow practitioners. And this is how a community goes, and this is how we support each other to make landscape architecture the best that it can be. I wish you the very best of luck and just tell you to enjoy the process. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Reem. My goodness, I'm sorry, but we are running a little bit above and beyond our planned time. But truly, this information that you're getting today is career building. It's not just award winning. This is career building information. It's not about entering an award. It's about laying the foundation for your career moving forward. What are you going to do when you leave university? Are you going to just hope you might get a job, or are you planning to be employed? And while there's a lot of opportunity in the Middle East for landscape architects, getting that start from an early stage needs some foundation. And so what you're hearing today is all about foundation. Well, our next speaker today is coming to us from Malaysia, but has tremendous connection to the GCC region. He is the president of the Oman Society of Landscape Architecture, Munir Sanadi. I'd like to invite him to come and talk to us now. I will give you a little bit of a warning. He's much older than he looks. I know it looks like he just stepped out of university himself, maybe a few years ago. I'll let him tell you how many years, but he is a brilliant example of a young man who has finished university, planned his entry to the landscape profession, and even though he was based in Oman, he it's a developing profession in Oman, but he has carved the niche for himself and is today the president of the Oman Society of Landscape Architects. Now, I'm sure he just didn't get that because he was the only landscape architect in Oman. I'm sure that position has come his way because he planned it from the days that he was in university. And today he is very much actively involved in the profession, and he is joining us today. He is, of course, the president of the Oman Society, and this means that the Oman Society of Landscape Architects this year is a co-partner in our event, and so we thank him for that initiative. And but he is also a really nice guy, so I'm sure you'll enjoy hearing from Munir. Munir, I'm going to hand it over to you. And
all right, yeah,
I'm sure you grew that mustache just to look a little bit older. Is that right?
Pretty much. So thank you so much, Philip. I truly appreciate it, and it's an honor to be here with all of you guys. The Landscape Middle East Award is definitely going to be a big step for all of us, especially the students. I was a student once, and honestly, I gotta say, it's always an honor to be surrounded by passionate, young creatives. Like Reem mentioned, once you're a student, you got all that fire in you. The sky's the limit, and it's an awesome opportunity for me here to share exactly what I want to present. So today I want to talk about landscape with purpose. And creating sustainable and social impact in spaces. As landscape architects, we get to think about, spaces and areas and public realms as just, visually aesthetic, realms. But it's more than that. There's a lot of big impact where we can, apply it through, our communities. And sometimes we get to neglect, the idea of communities. We get to think about, landscape in a very, physical manner, and we get to neglect the human touch or the emotional aspect of it. So we really have to, look at it in two ways. And one simple trick that I always, kind of say is that it's two fingers, but one hand. So we can think about, the two fingers as like, landscape, community, and then the one hand is the space. So this sort of, sets the framework of how you guys can, impact the community. And when it comes to community, especially in our region and GCC, in a sense, it plays a very big part. We are highly, connected, communities, especially in our region. We get to interact basically on a daily basis. It's part of our life. So it has a lot of interactions with landscape itself. So we have to think about landscape, like I mentioned, more of like a connector, with people. And through people, we see the space. It's more of like a social glue that combines us together, and where we can share our stories and get to our needs, and we get to our aspects of our daily lives. It becomes more of like an exclusive space where it really impacts our day-to-day basis. And then we think about the idea of sustainability. So these two kind of go together, but it only goes together if we really put it in the right way. So sustainability and landscape and communities are all glued in certain aspects, and these aspects could go all the way around, from ecological, designs that, can bring nature and biodiversity, where it will then, bring people in together to that space. You can think about it from cultural relevance. You can think about it from like a human, relevance in a sense. So there's a lot of, aspects that we can do as designers, to bring our landscape, with purpose, and when we get to think about purpose, we get to think about the motivation, we get to think about the action, we get to think about, the belief, in a sense, to how we can, engage with it together. And, as this year's theme, it's nature and community. So these two, play a very big part on how they combine together. And one thing I kind of wanted to emphasize, when we talk about landscape with purpose, is the idea of convivial spaces. So this is something that, we get to neglect sometimes as designers. Convivial spaces are, spaces that are welcoming, spaces that are like, socially, positive, especially that, combine and gather people in certain, areas and, certain neighborhoods. And, these really become more of like a storytelling, areas where, it embodies the idea of, how we can integrate our emotions and our human-centered touch on those locations. And this could all go back to the framework of well-being, mental health, physical activities, connecting with nature, and all those programs. So all these sorts of frameworks of understanding landscape, and spaces and communities all come to that certain one umbrella. And one thing I kind of wanted to share, in Oman especially, that we've been doing, and it's gonna sort of giving you guys a little bit of the Omani touches. We get to practice the basically the idea of ethnographic study, which is basically the study of observing people and looking at things from their perspective, and using them as a subject matter expert, from their eyes. So in Oman, in a sense, one thing that we have been doing to study landscape and to study spaces is to get to look at landscape from their eyes. So this is something that we've been kind of practicing for a while now, and it's been quite successful, considering that in Oman or in the Middle East, we're quite heavily cultured in terms of our day-to-day practices. So this gives us a lot of input and feedback from our identity, our heritage, our art, all the the economical, social basically factors. It all plays in together quite well. So we use the idea of ethnographic study to basically get all the answers that we need, so that when we shape the landscape, it becomes more purposeful, it becomes more meaningful, because that's what we want in the end. We don't want to design a space where it's going to be abandoned. We got to design a space where it can tell stories. We always say people make places, and through people, that places become alive. So it's as simple as that. It's not rocket science, and so we really have to get that idea concretely out, in a sense. So how can we basically enhance these spaces? I mean, this, like I mentioned, the sky's the limit. There's so many, frameworks of design that we can, do and basically follow. But we always want to think about how we look at it from like a human-centered, perspective. The human, basically, the user experience touch plays a very big part in shaping, the landscape. So that's always something you guys want to look at, once you're designing or you have a project that you guys are working on, is how we can really dig deep inside the human touch experience, because in the end, that's what really matters at the end of the day. So addressing sustainability and addressing, all these, sort of community aspects, all the way from ecological, perspectives or, ideas and programming to how we can integrate all those in one space. It all comes to applying your vision in it and applying, your framework of thinking in the design. And through that, it will really impact how you can look at things in the end. So basically, like I mentioned, landscape, architecture is endless with possibilities. You gotta really engage with creativity and imagination. You gotta use your imagination to really dig down on how you guys can expand on it and how you guys can basically experiment. I always say, also what Cristiano said, you always gotta touch with sketching. You gotta, integrate the hand. We always say as designer, our hand is the tool to draw, and the tool to draw your ideas in it, basically. So that's what I kind of wanted to basically emphasize on. So I just kind of wanted to end my talk here to emphasize on the idea of landscape architects. Landscape architects, we do not merely shape land. We shape emotions, memories, and the spirit of the place. And every path we draw is a story awaiting to be lived. So that's kind of something I always kind of go, and tell my friends and my colleagues and my classmates that are, I'm teaching here in a sense. We always have to integrate the idea that, we are human touch, basically implementers in space. We add the emotions, we add the dynamics, of the area. Unlike sometimes architecture is quite rigid in a sense, we play with a very dynamic nature. And through that dynamic nature, we can integrate all these emotions and all these aspects of storytelling, cultural aspects, and the human touch in it, basically. So that's it for my talk. Kind of keep it short and sweet. All the best to you guys all. It's very exciting and challenging, I know. But we've all been there in a sense at a certain time, and you just gotta go forward and basically put all yourself in, and surely it's gonna be a wonderful experience for all. Thank you all, and thanks, Philip, very much.
Mania, thank you. Thank you so much. That was a great talk. I mean, the point about the emotional connection is so important when it comes to landscaping, or especially other elements of the landscape design, like water features and artistic works that are incorporated in the hardscape. So what a wonderful discussion. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to invite Christina to turn on her microphone and video and to join me. Christina, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Christina, you were a finalist in our 2024 Student Awards, and so I thought I'd bring you on to ask you a few questions, but only because you were so good when I interviewed you at the awards. You were like a bit of a movie star there in front of the camera, so I really appreciate that. It was wonderful to see. But let's go back to the moment when your name was announced and you were standing up there on the stage as a Student Award finalist at the awards in 24. How did this make you feel? What was going through your mind when you were there?
Honestly, it felt amazing. I remember standing there and thinking about all the hard work and long nights my colleagues and I put into our project. And it was such a rewarding moment. And it truly felt like it was all worth it. You don't really understand the scale of these awards until you're actually in that room, surrounded by so many talented professionals and inspiring projects from across the region. So I felt both proud and humbled at the same time. And it's one of those moments that stays with you and I'll never forget it.
What did it mean to you personally, to be recognized as an award winner? I mean, did that have value for you? Did it elevate your position at the university? How did you experience this on a personal level?
On a personal level, it meant so much to me, mostly because as a student, there are always moments where you doubt yourself. You wonder if your ideas have real world value or if your work can truly make an impact. So being recognized validated not just our project, but also my belief in approaching landscape architecture as a tool for social and humanitarian change. And on a more personal level, it gave me such a huge confidence boost and reassured me that I was on the right path.
As you went through the process of preparing your award and submitting it and being recognized, being on the stage, receiving an award, how did this inspire your perspective of the future in landscape architecture as you will be this year. I guess you're moving into landscape architecture as your career. But how did this change your perspective? Did it help you be more reassuring that you're on the right step? How did this experience you?
I would say that it really opened my eyes to how broad and impactful our field can be. Like seeing all these projects from across the Middle East, each addressing very different social, environmental, and urban challenges, was incredibly inspiring. And what also made a huge impression on me was attending the conferences during the awards. So last year, I remember sessions that tackled urgent topics like designing resilient landscapes for a changing climate, urban greening strategies in arid regions, and hearing big personalities in the field share their insights was so motivating, such as today as well. Of course, we never stop learning through these opportunities. And beyond the sessions, connecting with professionals and peers from all over the region really made me see the power of collaboration in landscape architecture.
It's a very good point about continuing to learning. I think that's a message that's sort of come through from a few of our speakers today, especially Cristiano. And, I'm not going to say how old I am, but for the last 40 years, I've continued to learn. And it's such an important foundation that you need to have as you build your career. Now, I understand that you are planning to enter the awards again this year because you still qualify. You finished your university this year. You may not want to answer this question, but I'll throw it out there anyway. For students that are considering entering the 2025 award, what advice would you give to them? I think you're a nice person to answer the question for me.
I would say just go for it. Even if you're unsure or nervous, it's such an incredible experience and you honestly have nothing to lose. And I'm proof of that. So I participated last year and here I am again submitting my new work for this year's awards. It pushes you to reflect on your work in a different way, to communicate your ideas with clarity and confidence. And I would say that my advice would be to stay true to your vision and focus on how your project responds to real world needs, because that's what really makes it stand out.
Well, wonderful. Christina, thank you so much for joining us. I understand that you're coming to us from Lebanon, moving to the UAE later this year to sort of kick off with your career. So we do wish you the very best for that.
Thank you.
I do wish you the best for your entry this year for the awards. And we thank you for your time today. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
One of the interesting comments that have come through from the speakers today is this sense of being able to tell the story. And in your award presentation, I've seen many of the presentations from last year and the year before, and the student awards that we introduced last year, and I think it's very important that you're able to tell the story of your presentation. Some students just submit their end of year report, or they, send something that they've already done before, and that's perfectly fine. If that's what you want to do to enter the award, then go ahead and do that. But if you were to take that information and to share with the judges the story of your design, how you started, what you're thinking, what's your mind step, how will this be built, what is it going to be look like, what were the design elements? This is part of the story. You have to communicate to that to the judges this year. It's very important. And in the process, be able to answer the questions that have been presented to you as an entry to the award. Yes, you can answer the questions with words, and that's great. But in your presentation, you need to be able to unravel that in a storytelling process. And so give that some thought while you proceed. And so we have a couple of questions that we'd like to go to answer. If I could ask the panel to turn on their microphone and to share their video so that they can jump in and answer some of the questions. But to kick off, I just mentioned now about telling the story. Does as jurists, do you have anything to contribute to that? How does a student tell the story in their presentation? And I'm quick to nominate somebody if you don't jump in. So I'm going to go to Reem for this because I think you touched on the story. How does a student tell the story in their presentation? What are some of the points you'd be looking for?
Well, you have to have, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. So, it's like writing writing a novel, right? Or making a movie, right? You're telling a story. So there has to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you have to have a hook. Like, how do you hook us in? How do you grab our attention into your design? And then take us throughout the process, detail by detail. So sequencing is very important in your storytelling. It has to really be logical and ease us into it. And then maybe at some point there is like a climax moment in your design where it's like a bee drawing, right? And so, but at the end of the day, it's very, very unique to the person and the author who's telling the story. I can't tell you how to tell your story. The only person that can do that is you. But you have to think about how are you going to grab us and keep us there, hold our attention. I hope that helps.
Slowly.
I just noticed there were a couple of questions in the Q&A that actually say my name, so I'll just answer these quickly, if that's okay.
Oh, no, that's okay. We'll get to them in time because I'd like to hear Ying, turn on your microphone. Now tell me, when you see some of the awards around the world, when you hear the words storytelling, what does this mean to you, very briefly?
I think storytelling, there's a professional word called narrative. So narrative is always very, very important in design. It's actually linked with your concept at the very beginning. So I always suggest my students, I always teach design in the UK, in China, Brazil, Hong Kong. So everything needs to be something from the bottom of your heart. You really inspire, you really want to deliver, and then what you love can tell you what to do. I think this is what I want to deliver to the students. And this is also a phrase my first mentor in the UK, Martha Ross, told me when I worked in her office in London. So I want to share with everyone today. What you love can tell you what to do to make a story, make the right narrative for you.
Well, thank you. That's very good. I love marketing, so that's why I do what I do. So that's really cool. But there is another question here, and it's with respect to Iran. Now, we don't, typically for all of the awards, and because of the situation with the Middle East and Iran, we don't allow the entry of projects in Iran. But there is a question: can Iran university students submit their presentation for Iran? And the answer to that is I don't know, but I'm going to make the decision right now and say yes. If you're in Iran and you would like to make a presentation for our awards, then please do so. We hope that one day we won't have this issue with Iran and the Middle East, but please, you're welcome to submit your award entry from that region. So that's an answer to a question there. I'd like to go to Cristiano for this next question, because there's an interesting discussion about community and nature, and with respect to indigenous practices of individuals and co-creation of nature comes to mind. Do you see this as something that's going to be for the next generation, the next century? Are we going to be focusing more on community? Or is AI going to take everything over and we're just going to be sitting in front of a computer like my two boys do for the entire day of their summer? How do you see this thought about community? And while you're there, why don't you tell me, what do you think community is? What's your description of community?
Before I answer this one, may I give my contribution on the previous questions?
You're welcome to. Yes.
Because in general terms, I really appreciate the answers of my colleagues. But in practical terms, I think that the story in a project comes from a very initial studies and diagramming. The diagram is a conceptual abstraction, right, of your thinking. So I would suggest the students to do not underestimate the power of expressing their ideas and the story behind the project through very simple infographics, diagrams, even kind of comics or whatever is capable of delivering the concept without getting into the technical solution too fast. This is, I think, in a presentation for a competition, for an award, that when someone wants to explain the project without being there. Because if you're there, then you can tell the story. But if you're not there, your graphics will tell the story for you. And the text that is coming with it. But I think that is a very important component. And that kind of importance and skill of summarize in a very quick and simple sketch, or as I say, diagram, that makes the difference between a very precise and clear proposal and one that is not. That was my my idea for the narrative first, specifically for what is going to be on the project. Now, community. Well, we always design for communities. I mean, community is always involved in a project. Now, it depends what kind of communities. I saw the question, and it looks like, the question was like asking if there are personal and private clients. We design for everything, for every kind of possible clients and community. There are, public agencies asking for landscape design solution. Just imagine about when we design a park. Now, it depends. I think that the main difference is to understand the concept of inclusivity. And that's why I'm saying the difference between communities. Or accessibility of our project. These are the terms that actually define the largest concept of community that we want to include as a recipient of our design. And I think that more and more, again, nowadays, we see that most of the projects are somehow designed for specific components of the community. And that's kind of goes against the idea of the notion of public space, which is deteriorating nowadays because of safety, because of exclusivity, because of market requirements, and so on. And I think one of the concepts that the contemporary landscape design needs to keep working and keep struggling and keep fighting for is the openness of their project and the accessibility of the society at large. And that will make, through the use of spaces, the perceptual qualities of the space, the very sense of the community for me.
Before we go on to something else, while I agree with everything that you're saying, community isn't just only the big scale. We're not talking about the street or the suburb or the online community. A community is a place where people meet together. And this could be a family unit in a residential backyard. I finished interviewing a landscape company today, and we were talking about this specific subject. And we're talking about the community being the family unit, or in the Middle East, the extended family unit, or in the Middle East, the extended family unit and hundreds of friends that will come over for dinner at your house. And in that house, it's being, entertained in the outdoor landscaped environment. I mean, so community isn't just about, the hospital grounds or the park, or it can be broken down wherever people gather. We don't see a lot of entries to the awards of, the smaller scale residential developments that can be very beautiful and can have just the same meaning. So size and scale isn't as important as it is touching on this element of community. So, yeah, great point. Really appreciate it. Just on storytelling, we have a comment here from Wafa, one of our judges who happens to be listening to us. And so I'd like to read what she says. She says that when you're designing through storytelling, it's essential to first identify the different types of users. The designer takes on multiple roles, viewing the space through the eyes of various users and managers. And this approach helps uncover the distinct journeys, needs, and experiences of each user and type. By doing so, the design can be shaped to ensure what the space is both accessible and inclusive, accommodating diverse patterns of use and fostering in more meaningful user experiences. That is an award-winning response there to your question. And so thank you, Dr. Wafa. It's wonderful that you've contributed that and been a part of our webinar, so we appreciate it. But that's really good. I want to move on to another question before we finish. If there's any more questions, please submit it. Thank you for staying with us. We're a little bit beyond our planned 1 hour, but as I said before, this is career building information, and we really appreciate you staying with us. When it comes to designing a presentation or designing the award, what recommendations do you have to some free or accessible software that can be utilized to assist the students in this prep? Okay, so I don't know the technology associated to designing webinars, to designing landscape presentations or landscape designs, but what are some of the technologies that the students could be utilizing today that may be that would be accessible to their use? Mania, do you have any comment on this?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in on that. So there's a lot actually, and it kind of depends sometimes on where you are in this world. For example, in Asia, this part of the world, they use a lot of Rhino 3D to model basically their AutoCAD files. And then they use a lot of D5, rendering softwares to, give it that realistic look from Rhino. And maybe something that's quite interesting here, and maybe you guys can experiment too. If you guys haven't started designing a project, you guys could experience, with Grasshopper and Rhino. It's a quite interesting combination, especially at, this day and age, in a sense. And for your architectural, concept diagrams, which Cristiano kind of, basically put the spot there, you guys could use Illustrator AI to basically design isometric shape looking concepts. So that plays a very big part in, shaping the storytelling aspect. And for the presentation, which some use PowerPoint, but I don't recommend it that much. I would highly recommend, if you guys have access to, is to design your boards in InDesign, because in InDesign it's quite, programmed to apply layout, applying the right text and the size and the measurements, all quite, well, in a very organized manner. So that would be sort of my recommendation. You could use SketchUp, but I mean, in my perspective or in my professional opinion, people now are using a lot of Rhino, and especially with Twinmotion and D5 rendering softwares. They're quite friendly to, integrate those 3D models into, the rendering software. So that would be my opinion or recommendation if you guys would like to, experiment with those programs. InDesign is free. I just saw I think there's like a 2-month or 1-month trial subscription. So I think that would be enough until the submissions, which is until September.
Yeah,
So
but as a student, you get a huge discount. I pay a lot of money every month for my subscription to Adobe, but I'm a great fan of InDesign. It's quite intuitive to learn if you're not aware of it, and if you have access to it, fantastic. That's a great tool. I highly recommend it. Very good. So it's not free, but you might be able to get a free version to the student access to all the Adobe software. The whole suite is relatively inexpensive. If you can afford that, fantastic. Wonderful. Any other softwares that you might be aware of? Christina, what software did you use for your presentation last year?
We mostly work on Rhino, like Dr. Munir said, and we render on Lumion. So that's mostly it. For presentations, we do use InDesign, and diagrams, of course, Illustrator, Photoshop, depends if we're using pixels or vectors. So that's probably it.
Okay, so Rhino's getting a lot of attention today. We should get sponsorship from Rhino. What do you think? Let me know if you have any contacts there. We might be able to get sponsorship for our awards this year. That would be wonderful. Very good. Any other questions? What free students? So we've got that one. Very good. Any other questions from the audience today? It's going to be the last chance. All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go around the room. I'm just going to ask for a quick comment from each of our presenters today. Let's start with Christina. Thank you for joining us today. And do you have any final recommendation or something to say with regard to the awards this year?
I just hope that every person in this meeting today does submit, because it's really worth it. And I hope to see most of them over there.
Great. So it's a worthwhile
to everyone.
experience. Wonderful. Well, I'm sure they'll see you there. Good advice. Ying, over to you. What advice do you give final advice do you give to all of our entrants this year?
My advice is the same as I said. Be brave, have your courage, and look forward to reading your work in the competition submission. So good luck.
Wonderful. Brave and courageous. Fantastic. Munir, over to you. What advice do you have?
I wish everyone the best, honestly, and I would say look at it as, the 2025, your goal, checklist in a sense. So I think that would be quite cool, to have this, award as one of the highlights for your submissions. So all the best to all, and truly looking forward to seeing your projects.
I thought you were going to say go Oman. I thought you were going to encourage all the Omanis to make sure that
We're all in this together, in a sense.
doing it. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Cristiano. Now, I'm going to tell you, Cristiano has been very, very mild today. I have this photograph of Cristiano, and he's got a very, very stern look, and he won't let me change this because he thinks that this is the best profile image of his character. But he's a tough judge. He's probably the toughest judge that you have to convince this year. So, Cristiano, and that reminds me, you need to send me that photograph of you in that crowd because it's the only photograph I've ever seen with you when you've got hair. And so send me that photograph. I need that for my records. But what advice do you have for our students today? Well, we've lost your sound. We can't hear you. You're breaking in and out. It's an Italian thing, I think. You're coming to us from Italy. Yeah.
I try it again. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah. Go for it now.
Okay.
Yes, I think you're there.
Okay. I was saying this is an incredible opportunity for students. And I remember when I was participating in competition awards when I was a student to see what happens beyond my school, right? Because I'm used to see the work of my colleagues, my mates in the university, but this is like to have a kind of a window open to what other people are doing. And so, and kind of understand what are the trends, what can we learn from each other. And that's, I think, is the very spirit of this initiative, more than just winning it. Someone will win. That's okay. But the very big win will be learning from each other.
Wonderful. And Reem, you have the final say today. So thank you for joining us today, Reem. Appreciate you have a very, very busy schedule, I know. But your final comments for our audience today.
My advice is to carefully read the questions of the award entry and with a lot of care and thoughtfulness, answer them as best as you could. And make sure those themes are, that the theme is hit. And finally, just enjoy the process. Best of luck.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Well, be bold, be courageous, be creative, be innovative, enjoy the process. Wonderful comments from our panel today. I'll use the word esteemed. They're wonderful. I really appreciate your input, all of you. It's been a wonderful webinar. We are long over time, but I don't think that matters. This is worth more than an entire semester at university. I think the information that you've gathered today. I do wish you the very best in the preparation of your award for this year's entry. You're welcome to reach out to me and the team at any time. You can send an email to support@landscape-awards.com. It's there on the entry form. You're welcome to communicate. If you have any questions that need review or answer, we will address those and support you. Be creative and put together the best presentation you possibly can. You're not limited. The number of words that you use to explain your process, the size of the presentation files that you submit, there is no limit. And so this is your opportunity to shine because we want your presentation to be its absolute best. So ladies and gentlemen, guys from the universities around the region, thank you so much for joining us, panel. Thank you for sharing your time today, telling us your story. And we look forward to hearing your story about your creative landscape entry for the 2025 Middle East Landscape Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And with that, I'd like to say thank you and goodbye.